office, they're building the business right there next to the founder and the CEO. Welcome to the CFO Track. I'm Tom Hunter, and each week I sit down with some of Australia's best CFOs to discuss what the role of the modern finance leader actually looks like and to set the standard for everyone that's coming up with them. Let's get into it. On today's episode, I'm joined by Mike Ammendolia, the CFO and Chief Revenue Officer of Prezzee, a global digital gift card business and fintech company, from a cost controller into a growth partner. I hope you enjoy it, so here we go. This episode is brought to you by Tellystone.com, your AI company secretary and advisor. Delegate the grind and make key decisions with confidence. Find out more at Tellystone.com/CFO Track. Mike Ammendolia, welcome to the CFO Track podcast.
Thanks, Tom. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Great to have you here. How's the week been?
Yeah, busy. I think for many CFOs, it's that time of the year where you're basically closing off end of fund, helping the team, but then you're trying to look forward and getting the budget and the strategy signed off. So very hectic, but once that's done, we can start to clearly look forward, and I can start to kind of roadshow where the executive team wants to end up. So we're at that kind of part in the year.
The life of a financial person, you just have to wave goodbye to your families, and I'll see you in a few weeks.
Yes. Time to just focus forward. You're kind of in that limbo period where you want to squeeze the juice as much as you can, but then also really want to start thinking about actioning massive things that you want to focus on and execute on. So interesting time.
Nice. So I've already given the listeners a bit of an intro to yourself, but I can never do it justice. So it'd be good to hear from you, a bit of a bird's eye view. What are you doing at the minute?
Yeah, sure. As some of you might be able to tell by my accent, I'm from North America, Canada specifically, and I've been spending time in Australia for 11 years. I'm a citizen now. But maybe very similar to other CFOs, started in a big four accounting firm, and that was the ticket to leave the cold of Toronto and move to warmer pastures and just overall just such a resilient, lucky country, as they call it here, Australia, for opportunity. And so for me, it was a mix of getting that experience internationally, but also migrating to a place that I've never been before that seemed exotic. From all the way in Canada, and haven't looked back, been just thrilled to be here, and just I don't think I would have the same quote unquote success or opportunity that being in Sydney than I would have in many other places in the world. So I'm grateful.
And then what's your role currently?
Yeah, so my role currently, I'm the CFO, but I'm also, and maybe this is really non-kosher, but I'm also the Chief Revenue Officer at Prezzee. And Prezzee is a global digital gift card company. We're in 7 markets. And that just kind of came about getting a really strong hold of the finance function, getting governance, and just really hiring some amazing people that I could rely on, which then really further allowed me to seep into other areas of the business. And now I look after our sales teams and presidents globally.
Yeah, cool. Well, we'll come back to that. First of all, we'll go back to the start. What was it about finance? Why accounting? How did it get to that point?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So, where really all started was, I guess, the fundamentals for me was I went into university with a business administration degree that I was pursuing. And for me, accounting just seemed more pragmatic and practical compared to some of the other classes I was taking. I could never really wrap my head around, and I wasn't the smartest person in the room by far on kind of the arbitrage. Just more the concepts and the arbitrage of financial theory. And so I just felt a lot of my friends were going into investment management and not investment banking. But for me, maybe just, looking at my father and other people who are trying to run businesses or clinics, understanding how a business works just felt just way more hands-on to me. And so accounting, at least how my professors articulated it to me, it just felt more hands-on. And I had great professors who influenced me to stay in accounting. So I guess that was the catalyst to stay in there. But I definitely wasn't the smartest person in the room. I actually didn't get a subsequent interview after trying to get an internship with the big four accounting firms. So I actually got rejected. And it was only from me being able to find another kind of sponsored event that Deloitte was doing. They were hosting an entrepreneurship conference. And at the time, I was actually doing some DJing and promotion work at the university. And
what year was this?
This was back in 2009, 2010.
Okay.
And so once you,
track. 2009.
I was playing a mixture of different types of genres. Yeah, I was playing some deep house, some electro. It was very popular back then, like Justice, Boys Noise, Beetroots. And the fact that we were a university club activity, we were able to promote to everybody else in the university. So we actually took that idea, and it was a very competitive advantage that we have. And so we were able to host massive events, and that's where I had an opportunity to do that, and also call myself somewhat of an entrepreneur with this group of people. And so Deloitte liked it, and they invited me to go to this conference, and I was the oldest person there because it was really for first and second year students. But I hustled really hard. And I guess, that just shows that when you fall down and you fail, you pick yourself back up and you try and find other avenues. And I just hustled to get a full-time job. And they gave that to me after that. So
love that. Yeah. And how was the first period like? Was it what you anticipated?
Yeah, largely so. You hear about kind of the battle stories in your first year working at an accounting firm. And to me, the advice I got from my professors going into it was just be useful, like go into it and go and show your positivity, show your energy, try to serve, everybody, the partner, the client, your senior analyst. And again, I knew I wasn't kind of book smarts, but I knew that I would have the energy and resilience to power through. And I think that's how you end up forming relationships with your audit partner and your manager. And then they put you on jobs that you want to try and work on. And you get more of a choice on having a better experience and mitigating that downside of at least working on areas you want to work on and working with people you like working with. And I think that was the learning from that.
Yeah, nice. So how long had you been working there before moving across?
So I worked there right until getting my CPA. So that was be around 3 years. And then I used that as a stepping stone to look elsewhere. It was one of those fork in the road moments where, you could go where many of my colleagues went to: New York, London, Boston. Those two places are not too far away from Toronto. But for me, there seemed to be a lot of activity actually out of Melbourne. And they said that they were growing very quickly. And I just thought, sunshine. I thought there were beaches in Melbourne, not exactly in the city. And it seemed also to be growing. There was actually a growing use for bringing on a lot of expats. So I thought, let's go somewhere exotic. And I was really happy with the move.
So did you go to Melbourne originally?
I started in Melbourne first for 2 years. And I wanted to give it a chance. Maybe you have an audience that are, from both cities.
Well, I'm from Melbourne originally myself, and then now in Sydney, and I'm definitely a Sydney sider now. Yeah,
I think for me, I would have kicked myself because it was only a secondment, and I would have kicked myself if I never experienced Sydney because of the beaches and the warm weather. So I love Melbourne for those 2 years because I just loved the nightlife, the food, easy to get around, so much going on. But from someone who was reading Australia from the National Geographic and other places, it's always kind of around the Sydney, the sunshine, the beaches, and I had to do that. So
nice, happy days. So when did you get to Sydney? What sort of stuff, what sort of projects were you working on?
Yeah, so when I was started in Toronto, I was in financial services. And a funny story about that too, I didn't have a car. I was coming out of university, didn't really have much saved. And so for me, I really wanted to work in a sector where I didn't actually need a car to do inventory counts. So the CBD of Toronto was prime and well known for financial services. So I wanted to get on the industry that was going in the right direction, popular, and also could allow me to easily to get into the city. But that also allowed me to then move to, other major cities that where financial services is a big part of the economy. So I was able to move there and then work on mutual banks. I did some secondments at NAB, at ANZ. And so that was great. I actually got to get some industry experience as well, working there. But then when I moved to Sydney, I continued to work with a partner, Mark Lumsden, who I look up still to today. He's a great mentor. And I wanted to leave at many times. People may know or may look at my record. I was at Deloitte for almost 10 years. But there were many points where I could have left, but he continued to help shape my portfolio and keep me there because I wanted to work on startups and technology-based companies and whatnot. And he helped craft a portfolio with me so I could use financial services, but geared towards the tech ecosystem. That was actually booming at that time. So it was quite lucky that many different digital banks, neobanks, buy now, pay later, that was all kind of, I was riding kind of the tailwinds of that. And we were able to structure a portfolio for me as a director in moving into that.
So do you think you would have had the career to the point you are if you didn't take it? It sounds like you wouldn't have.
I think so. Yeah. If I didn't get, if I didn't find the right partners who really cared about me and backed me, I would have left. And, nothing against some of these other areas, but they definitely weren't my strength. But, I was about to actually sign with going to one of the big banks in internal audit. And again, like no disrespect to internal. For some people, it's a great thing. But for me, it would have been a very different career path from where I'm going now. And it was really the partners who said, no, we'll make sure that we can shift your portfolio so you get some fun out of the clients that you're working on. So I was really grateful for that. And even, my first industry gig outside of Deloitte was Zip. And that one was purely fascinating because I actually was about to leave to go for another company. And I was basically telling my clients that I was leaving, and they said, "Oh, we loved working with you so much. Do you want to actually come work for us instead?" And Zip actually put in a counter offer within 48 hours. And I was never even planning on going to work for Zip, but they liked me, they liked my previous work I had done with them so much that they were able. And I guess that's another learning there was just, from all the experiences you have, just ensure that, you can try and get along great with your clients and help others, because that network can come out back and help you in mysterious ways.
Yeah, it goes to show if someone wants something, they'll move quick.
Yeah, exactly. And they gave me like a role that I would have never expected first coming out of, an accounting firm, which I was, internally grateful for. Martin Brook, the CFO, really backed me, and he went all the way up to the board to get this contract over the line for me. So yeah, I'm grateful.
Nice. We'll come back to it in a sec, but it sounded like a lot of the projects you're working on at Deloitte were some pretty cool pieces of work. Were there any specific ones during that time that stood out?
Yeah. So, thanks to Deloitte and really Josh Tenshaw, who's running the Tech Fast 50, he still does that today. He was working on a lot of these smaller growth tech companies that the firm was still willing to back at that time. And, we had the really, successful ones like Zip, MoneyMe, Prospa, these we helped IPO, and we're also an audit client. And a number of the neobanks that were big at that time, 86400, Volt, Zinja. So I had kind of like a small and growing portfolio of these fintechs, and it allowed me to kind of grow with them, and it helped me in my career, where I was able to get promoted pretty quickly, build up a portfolio, and get exposure to even helping out with an IPO and some financial advisory work. So again, I feel like I got really lucky being excited about an area that was really growing at that time. And again, I had a partnership that was willing to back me and help build that out. So yeah.
Sounds awesome. What specific pieces of work were you doing though? When you were doing the work on the IPO or whatever, what were you doing specifically?
Totally. So it always first started on the fundamentals of working on the audit and helping getting their financial statements over the line. And then as they were talking about, IPO, we would do much more detailed reviews on controls, governance, making sure they're getting set up for success. And then when the IPO came around, we also had to do a financial due diligence, and that was formed part of all the prospectus work. And so I was very much involved in that aspect, carve out of the IPO. And so I got to work with the financial advisor team, valuations team, and whatnot, and that provided some great exposure to that, and it was a fun ride.
Yeah, brilliant. I think a lot of the time the hesitancy that coming from Big Four might be exposed to the surface level component of it, but it sounds like you're pretty in depth and pretty involved. Yeah,
exactly. I think the benefit of working in the Big Four is you get to partner and jump into many different aspects of work that the firm can offer. And when you play that manager director role, you can kind of be the quarterback and help coordinate. all of that. And then when you go into industry, I feel like I can draw at least on the network, but on the skills that I learned in those various areas. Like when I was working at Volt, where we did a capital raise, or when I was working at Zip, when we were trying to list on the Nasdaq with Sezzle, those skills became very, very useful, and that network also became very useful as well.
Yeah, cool. So back to that role before, what were the titles again? Like director of new markets or something? What does that even entail?
Yeah, so I've had some wacky titles in the past as well too. But yeah, for that one, I think again, timing and luck, I guess being prepared and having that opportunity is the equation for luck. And that came about there where he needed somebody at that time, and he was willing to draft an employment letter pretty quickly because it was going from 4 to 14 markets very quickly. They needed someone to get into the weeds, go out there, help do the due diligence, embed. This is more from the post M&A integration, but I did also help with the pricing, and there's a lot of accounting that you need to do leading up to the M&A deal. But this was really the post M&A or the organic expansion and integration of finance teams and doing the financial, tax, et cetera, due diligence. And the CFO did not want to do that on his own. And I guess he saw my hunger and my ability to jump into that, even though I really only had an audit with some, consulting financial advisory experience. He just thought I could get in there and just really understand and build up processes, controls, and streamline how we do things in Australia to these other markets. So I was sent across to help build out the Canadian office, the Mexico office. We bought some buy now, pay laters in Czech Republic, in the Middle East, in South Africa. And I'll never forget this. We were in the middle of COVID. We did a lot of these deals all through Zoom. It was great. And this was before my time, some of these deals. But we then actually thought, Mike, we're going to send you halfway across the world on a Boeing 737 on Qantas. There's nobody else on these flights. We're going to get an exemption from the government, from Home Affairs, to send you across for business purposes. And they sent me across to actually check these businesses out because we did the whole deal on Zoom to make sure that we can integrate and we can get to know these founders because we bought their buy now, pay later business. So I'll never forget that. And that was crazy, going to Dubai and going to the Czech Republic and going back home to Canada as well. And just building that out when many people were unfortunately kind of stuck. So that was an awesome experience to look.
When you walk into a place like that, how do you decide where to sit?
Yeah, it was interesting. Like when we were walking into Spotty, which was one of the buy now, pay laters we purchased at Zip. Like they put out like the red carpet, they put a sign up, I think maybe a couple of days before, saying like we're owned by Zip and whatnot, because everybody was just kind of in lockdown. So, and I got face to face to meet some of these founders that were being part of the Zip family. And so it was really interesting. But again, when you buy these buy now, pay laters at various stages of maturity, we were buying, some of them were in startup phase, some were in scale up. And so just trying to embed the culture and the processes, because everything was happening so quickly with Afterpay under Block and then Zip and then what was happening in the US, that, obviously with hubris and a bit of like hindsight, obviously things went south after that with the tech crunch. But in that moment, it was all about really planting a flag in many markets to ride that buy now, pay later.
Yeah, awesome. And then your CFO role with Data Mesh, that was the first one, right?
That was my first CFO role. Yeah. So once, when we came out of that kind of tech crunch, and then we were starting to then move more insular back to our core markets, I had to do, some people say maybe I was part of the problem, and I was also had to be the solution. We grew so much that we actually had to then cut back. And so when we had to restructure, cut back, my role then ultimately adapted to then being the group financial controller, given I was doing some controllership in these smaller markets. And the CFO liked what I was doing there. So he said, why don't you be the group financial controller? And so I stepped into that. And then after a while, when it was looking like, we've executed on the restructure, and then we wanted to obviously just continuously execute on that to try and get back to a sustainable growth and a profitable growth, I got tapped on the shoulder by a recruiter. And he said, listen, like, I know you've always been mentioning that, you wanted to work at a much smaller scale startup at some point and be a CFO. And here's an opportunity for you to be a CFO and do that. And so I jumped on that opportunity to do that. And was part of helping doing a Series A capital raise for Data Mesh. We expanded to India as well. And we were growing there, but it was a great training ground for me to be a CFO. And I was very fortunate that one of the founders was the CFO there. And so Guy Burnett, really look up to him. He was a great mentor as well there. And so it was, again, very similar to like me coming in, knowing the CFO, Martin Brook at the time at Zip, having some great partners there. It was I felt very safe. Felt it was okay to make mistakes. And I wasn't going in cold. And so it was a great training ground for me to be a proper, CFO.
Yeah. So you came in pre-Series A?
We were in the middle of doing a Series A. So we came in, we were in negotiations with NAB, with Deutsche Bank. I remember in my first day there, I had to help build out a financial model on the MRR of this company and scale it up. And then we were having negotiations, but we were in the middle of doing a Series A round. And then we did a bridging round while I was there as well later. But just thrown right into it because I was mainly dealing with it on the other side. And we did some convertible debt raises as well while we're at Zip. But that was more from the accounting point of view. But I was just drinking from the fire hose when I first got there. That's for sure.
Yeah. So how was the transition that coming into the role, like high growth business, first CFO? What was that like?
Yeah, I think at least the way I was able to convince the founders to, whether we call it take a bet on me or whatnot, was given I was in like a highly regulated listed environment of Zip. They knew, and Deloitte, they felt like I had a good foundation, and I knew what good looks like and how it can scale up from the fintechs that I worked on. But then I also think at least how I was able to frame it was that when I was working with these subsidiaries of Zip and we had to integrate them and scale them up, that's where I really leaned on the relatable experience of working in a startup, because I had all these kind of babies that I had to like bring in and scale up and whatnot. I just really doubled down on that experience to show that I had kind of the best of both worlds. To come in and help them at Data Mesh, and they liked that, and so that's how they brought me on.
Were there any big challenges you didn't anticipate coming into your first CFO role?
I mean, well, when working there, I guess very different from Zip, where you're listed and you can find much more broader ways to seek capital. For there, we had a number of investors. We had a cadence of trying to raise capital. We had monthly board meetings, and so there was just the flow of information and adapting and recutting numbers on how things are moving so quickly. I felt that was the key skill set I needed. I didn't need to have very technical skill sets on a number of things because we're in payments, we're focused on these certain areas. And so that technical side was not really needed. It was more the resilience and the adaptability to just deal with the demand coming at you on a weekly basis. And I felt that when you work in Big Four and you also work for as well Zip on how quickly things are moving, I felt that adaptability they also liked, because I was just used to very high, fast-paced environments.
Yeah, gotcha. Was there anything specific that you took from it that helped when you took on a further CFO role?
I guess as part of that movement from going from Data Mesh to Prezzee, what I really took from Data Mesh is just working in a very founder-led business, especially when you have multiple founders. It's really taking them on the journey, storytelling, especially when they're not coming, some of them may not be from a financial background, being able to really distill it down to simple storytelling statements to show them where they're at and where we need to go. That was incredibly useful at Data Mesh. And again, given the monthly board meetings we had and investors, I feel like I was able to really massage and craft my presentation speaking, because I didn't really have a lot of that at Zip, because I had the group CFO there. And so that really helped me. And I think that helps me today in my revenue side of the equation, because I feel like I was able to really craft my soft skills, which is actually really critical as you kind of continue to move up. And whether it's you want to play more of a revenue commercial role, whether you want to differentiate yourself from AI that's coming into play, those soft skills, that ability to narrate and distill is continuing to be so critical. So,
quick one before we get back to it. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably already know that I recruit for senior finance professionals for high growth businesses. That's what I do outside of this show. And my approach is built around storytelling. When I take on a search, I build a narrative around the business, who they are, what they're building, where they're going, and why that role matters. Before I reach out to a single candidate, I tell that story across multiple channels to my network of over 28,000 finance professionals in Australia, so that when I do start conversations, candidates already know who you are and there's a level of buy-in before I even contact them. So if you're a founder, CEO or CFO that's thinking about a finance hire, even if it's early days, I'm always happy to chat, whether that's a question, some free advice, or a sense check on what the market looks like. You can find me on LinkedIn or at storyrecruitment.com.au. All right, let's get back into it. Yeah, nice. How did the Prezzee role come up, or did you know someone there?
Yeah, again, for that one, that's I think it's just about to like knowing your network and staying in touch, because I was also tapped on the shoulder that time. I wasn't actively looking, very similar to Zip, and the recruiter basically said they're looking for a CFO to help them expand into many markets. Yeah, and they're riding an amazing wave of growth. Quite stable. They had been around for 9 years at that time. And with that one key founder who was backing the company, it just felt like it was a really stable place to work into and a ton of upside. And I felt like I was starting to notice a theme for me where I seem to thrive, and I really enjoy working in those businesses that are not going from 0 to 1, but more from going from 1 to 5 or 2 to 5. So they've set up, they've got the GL, they've got numbers, they have a value proposition and a product market fit. And I can really be there to help actually transform the finance function, think more commercially, and double down on those verticals. And build out the unit economics of how we create a very protective economic moat and competitive moat for the business. And so I feel like that's where I want to continue to play, because I feel like that's my sweet spot.
Yeah, nice. And so you said they were 9 years old in a couple of countries, but what does the whole head count across the business look like?
Yeah, so the I was being interviewed by the CFO who was moving into the CEO role. And in previous years, and again, this is all public. The company was not profitable, but we were growing immensely fast, and we want to enter more markets to be basically within stepping stone of where our strategic partners wanted us to go. So the operating model I really liked, because we had significant operating leverage. We had a tech stack that was very homogenous that you could just plant in many markets. And I came from a banking background, and here when you're dealing with gift cards, you don't really have to deal much with credit risk and liquidity risk as much, because you're in the gift card ecosystem. So I just love the fundamentals and the aspects and the characteristics that I had to scale. So I was really put in there to say, we're going into all these new markets, help us scale. The finance function is behind. Our month end is like 3 or 4 months behind. We want to offshore certain aspects of the finance function, and we want to get us ready to hopefully so we can list, someday in the future. And so that was my remit. And so I just really went on hard on that. I got the confidence from them to hire people. Again, I think one of the things I've always noticed is I was just really hiring people who are smarter than me in functional areas that I trust. Yeah. And they were able to just let me step out of the weeds so I can really get a clear overview. So I was able to build out an FP&A function, a tax function and whatnot, an offshore a number of roles to help keep the costs in line. And so we made a profit. We had a 54% growth. We still made the Deloitte Tech Fast 50 after being 10 years, a 10-year-old business. And so we just continued to try and double down in those areas. And I guess it just led me to have a very stable finance function that was running. And I guess maybe some people are very hesitant to move very quickly and get that stability. And then I find my I guess philosophy has been, you want to set up in a way where you're almost irrelevant because it's running on its own. And I'm sure some people will find that very frightening. But if I didn't also think in that mindset, I wouldn't be given the opportunity to now do revenue related stuff or go to the US and be the acting president there, because I was able to make sure that I was now thinking at a strategic level than being a CFO operator. And I think also in the time of AI, you're hearing all these buzzwords about, completely using AI to do the whole finance operations. I'm just trying to differentiate myself so that I can look across more areas than just being a compliance or an operator CFO, being much more than that.
Yeah. So when you come into a role where there are a few priorities in the first 6 months like that, how do you work through it? How do you prioritize time and decide on which ones come first?
Yeah. No, it's great. Try and get that clarity during the interview process so I can play it back, and it helps me map out my 90-day plan. And there's a lot of great books that are out there about, thinking about your 90-day plan, about going in and listening to the founder, the CEO, your key stakeholders. You don't obviously want to come in guns blazing and saying you're going to change everything, and you have a point of view without seeking feedback from everybody. So going in and then playing that back after 30 days, saying, this is what I heard from you guys. Here are the priorities. Here's how I've ranked them. Here's the resourcing I need. Here's how I'm going to try and offset that if I can, either offshoring or and here's some quick wins out of those things that I can add value. And I just tried to take them on a journey saying, here are all the things. It's not all going to happen in the first quarter, or maybe some of them not even the first year. But if the eventual goal is either to list or to be sold one day, here's how I work backwards from that. And it can be done and this was before AI, and I'm sure AI tools can easily map this out. But again, for me, it was about taking them on the journey, showing that you've got confidence working for me. I may not have all the answers, but I've at least listened. And this is the things that you guys have said that are important to you. And then it's just executing on that roadmap. And again, that roadmap will always change. Things always shift and pivot, especially in that, but at least starting with a plan and knowing that you can adapt to that, I thought was really important for me as a framework way of thinking.
Yeah. So did you say they turned profitable and grew 54% in 1 year in the first year?
In the first year, yeah. We were losing money in that first year, and we had to basically, it was almost like a zero-based budgeting, or everything had to go through me. And it was a great way for me to actually get into the detail of what are all of our costs. And again, I just had a CFO who then moved to the CEO, who's willing to back me to do that. And so I just really contained the cost base. We really we looked at every major SaaS contract that we were getting into to make sure, is this the right approach? And we were very intentional at the beginning about when we were entering into different markets. Were we going into these markets with an existing partner who could turn on volume right away if we entered into? We already knew that there was demand waiting for us there, and so we had an operating model that could really scale like that very quickly. So, those are kind of the timbits of stuff that really helped us hit profitability. And again, we were riding also some great tailwinds of strategic partners that were just doing really, really well in the market with gift cards. Right after COVID, we just had immense success of the digitalization of gift cards globally.
Nice. And how did the US role come up?
So that was interesting. So one of the markets where we weren't doing really well on was the US. And we decided to move on the president who was there at that time. And we had a gap. We had not been able to backfill that president. And again, I think the fact that the finance function was operating pretty smoothly to some degree, and we needed someone to really step in there and relook at the team there, as well as help with trying to hire a president. That they thought, Mike, we know you're open to travel. We know you've got the finance function seems to be working smoothly, and you've also started to go in and help from a RevOps perspective. The RevOps was really to get me the bridge from finance to revenue, and also to gain some confidence that I had somewhat of a commercial mindset.
Sure.
And so they said, why don't you go over there and given your experiences at Zip and, setting up or integrating functions, why don't you just keep it on life support and relook at the team? There was very low expectations for me. It was really to just make sure that someone from the executive team was really there to make sure it was operating, and we were really looking at the sizing of that and hiring the right fit. And so that was really my mandate of those 3 principles. And so I said, yeah, let's do it. And it was really actually interesting full circle, because I declined to go to New York when I was at Deloitte, and I decided to go to Melbourne.
Okay.
And so this was kind of a first circle 10 years later. Oh, I actually get to now go to New York, and I probably have some disposable income. I won't be like sharing, a room with like 5 other people in Manhattan. So it was awesome to like live in New York for 4 to 5 months. And awesome. I got a lot of great skills of like operating a small team and restructuring, and then trying to set somewhat of a strategy for the sales team that was there, which then allowed the CEO and the founder to think, oh, well, Mike, why don't you do this across all markets and get that governance in place? And so I would say to many CFOs who want to lean more commercially to be a chief revenue officer than a chief risk officer, is, double down on the experience you have in finance, on the unit economics, on the commercial viability, and on the trends that you're seeing from a RevOps perspective, and translate that into, the sales function on building out that governance, that reporting, that good operating rhythm, that culture, that sales culture based off of those processes and controls. That's how I've been able to at least convince the executive team that it's a good fit for me to move across and use those skills. I'm not a salesperson. I have really strong heads of sales who've got those sales techniques. But I think once it's up to a stage where we've got a good governance, we've got a good incentive structure, we've got a good team structure on who's hunting, who's farming our clients, then we can bring on another type of commercial officer who's got a different go-to-market, more sales skill set. So, it was a good stepping stone for us to get us into that role.
Do you, coming in with a CFO lens for a role like that, do you think there's times where it actually hinders you?
Definitely. There was definitely a lot of thoughts from many of the executives that I would be very, very I would see everything as a cost.
Yeah.
And so I had to really change my image and the narrative I went to within these lot of executive meetings, that when it came to decisions about where we spend our money, it wasn't just about me just saying, no, I don't like that cost because I just can't see something tangible. It's like, no, what would need to be true for me to say yes? And I think I started to develop that behavior as a CFO, so that when people would come to me with wanting to spend, I would say, I could definitely say yes to this if these things were true, so that they knew that I was thinking commercially, and that I knew that there was some sort of benefit that would needed to be materialized. And again, coming from an audit, right? Your audit background is about getting enough comfort and assurance that something is believable. So I would try and use that skill set from a revenue, saying, I'd love to spend on this if we know that these short-term benefits could be realized. And so that changed the framing of when people would come up to business cases and use cases. And then I use that in my revenue role to lay out a plan that was built on confidence levels. Where are we winning? Why are we winning? Why am I very confident that we will continue to win there? Let's double down there. And I think whether it's like different periods of growth the economy is in, and different, ebbs and flows of the tech sector, I feel like the tech sector right now is based off of, the quality of earnings. Maybe not right now with data centers and AI, but maybe like, when I was in this role a year ago, that was the foundation. And so I would say to any CFO who's working with the sales team, working with that team, the first easiest lever of growth is related to your existing product offering and the existing clients you're serving. That is the easiest lever to grow revenue. And I would always start off with those fundamentals because they're safe, they're predictable, and I can easily map an argument to grow it and build the confidence of the equity team. If I'm talking about new types of products, new markets, you go down that list, it becomes less and less reliable and confident. And so I just used those fundamentals to build a go-to-market and a sales strategy on what I know is working and understanding the details of our client base. And I feel like you already kind of look at like that already as a CFO, whether it's the concentration risk, what's the quality of earnings, where's the revenue coming from? A lot of crossover there. Similar to how people think risk and finance crossover there, I feel like there's a lot of good crossover there from a revenue point of view.
Yeah, nice. I think it's a space that would help a lot of CFOs, to be honest. It's just whether they have the ability or the skill set or all that kind of thing to be able to do that. Is there any advice for someone that's wanting to do it more and how to get out into the revenue space?
Yeah, I think, when for CFOs right now who are going through the budget cycle and the strategy, I think it's a great way to, again, not only interrogate your OpEx to see what value are we getting that and how we can reduce that in the face of AI and whatnot, but look at the other side of the equation and what bets do we want to make? And I wouldn't even frame them as bets. It was just more, what strategic investments do we want to make that we know that there's some tangible upsides? And so AI is obviously a big one right now with my CRO hat. How can we use AI? It's not a cost cutting, but actually all these amazing outbounding and AI tools to feed the funnel or triage clients or do the whole account management automated. There's so many tools you can use based on account management, outbounding, inbounding, or offshoring a center of excellence. So your sales team just focus on the high growth clients and focus all their time on selling. And that's how I've really focused on, I can set aggressive targets and I can see the end outcome and work backwards by having more of a growth revenue mindset related to those costs. And so again, so it's not just a straight no, but a no but. And then the second thing is that, what investments actually lead to top line growth rather than just a cost cutting exercise. That's the advice. And then again, I think if you come from that accounting background, you'll know that you live and breathe processes and controls. And when you look at the sales function, you see there's either a misalignment of incentives, there's an overlapping roles and responsibilities. It's not clear who's doing what in the sales function, and you don't get the reporting you need on the drivers. These are very easy questions that you can ask as a CFO that will get you working more commercially. And maybe if you want to become a CRO, those are the foundations you need to have a proper working sales team.
Nice. And then where do you see things going over the next few years for Prezzee specifically?
For Prezzee specifically, it's really, I think, three things we need to do really well before we contemplate what's that future state, whether we're listed or whatnot. Is again, I mentioned I was in the US and I'm betting that down, and we want to show that we can succeed in the US, and we've got those right strategic partners there that are gonna make us a name for ourselves and invest in the brand in that area. I think that's extremely important. We've already started to prove that we've got a tech stack that is homogenous and can be replicated in many markets. But to prove that these smaller markets, we can get that critical mass, and that means going in with those strategic partners. I think that's a second thing. And then third is we announced recently that we're becoming more vertically integrated. And so previously we were seen the last 10 years as being a distributor of gift cards. But now we can actually create and manage gift card programs. And so it's more like how can we democratize gift cards, especially in Australia? We do so well in the small to medium-sized enterprise business area. How can we help them grow their client base and whatnot by offering and creating a gift card for them and using it as a tool, not only for the employees, but also to help retain and attract customers. And so we're hoping to, roll that out not only in Australia, but then throughout our other markets. And so I think with that secret sauce and being across three different channels, B2B, B2C, and B2B2B, B2B to C, I think that's a great flywheel. And that's how, I expect to communicate that competitive moat down the road. Yeah.
And then more from finance specifically, or finance in fintech, where do you see all that going over the next couple of years?
Yeah. So I think for finance and where it's heading, I think, I've encouraged my team to embrace this opportunity where the company is subsidizing and giving them the space and time to be curious with AI and experiment.
Yeah.
Not only obviously is it good for the company, but it's good for their careers, because if they go back out to the job market, people will be wondering how they're using AI and how are they staying relevant. And so we want to provide this as a training run. I think Richard Branson said, treat them as well as you can. And then if you treat them so well, then they may not even want to leave. And so give them the opportunities that you care about their career and where they want to go. And so that's how we're embracing that. And we're even doing it with our offshore staff. Our offshore staff, especially in the Philippines, they're feeling like call centers, finance function, they're feeling nervous. And we're saying, hey, we're also going to give you the tools. We want you to do more value add work. And so we see how you can innovate a lot of the manual processes that you're doing. And so I think that's a double benefit if you can both offshore and also have them create agents and QA that work. I think the quality assurance in AI is going to continue to grow. That is going to be a skill set that you need, because you're going to be reviewing prompts and always reviewing work and making sure that it's been done in the right way. So yeah, I think that's my advice to embracing AI. And then I think the second thing is that just means that you need to double down and working collaboratively with other functional areas, because that will never go. You need to work with other departments on new initiatives. AI can't replicate that. So collaborating and being seen part of a partner. And then third is where I just feel very lucky, because I got this earlier on, but yeah, how do you narrate and simplify? Because then the main thing coming out of finance is what is the insight? And so what does that mean? What do we need to do next if we see these trends continuing? And someone has to communicate that and present that to a board or present that to the executive team. They can't get it from just reading an AI brief. Someone actually has to take that on the journey, and you should ask your financial controller or your head of FP&A or whatnot to help get those skill sets to brief you, so then you can brief your executive team. So I think collaboration, being able to tell the story and show that empathy that AI can have, and then really embracing AI, but in the right way where it's actually helpful for everybody's long-term career in this sector.
Nice. Well, I think that's as good a point as any to finish up. But you've been great, Mike. Your approach to building businesses, expanding internationally, and the working outside of the finance function has been awesome. And I think the listeners would agree too.
Awesome.
So if any of them have any questions, want to reach out, are you open to fielding questions?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't have social media, but I do have LinkedIn. That's one social media I do have, and so they can feel free to connect with me on there and ask any questions. And again, I do feel that the CFO is just going to play an incredible role now, and actually driving like the value levers, especially with AI, and how we can people can accelerate their funnel, especially in SaaS, which is being significantly impacted right now. I think the CFO can really step into that more commercial aspect. And with what I'm seeing right now and how easy it is to use no code to integrate a lot of the software that people have into Claude or into Gemini, into your Gmail or whatnot, I feel like we should have the tools now to drive a lot of those sequencing reporting to get that insight, and to then be seen as a partner in the across all the functions in the business. So that's what I think we're in a very opportunistic time for CFOs.
Awesome. Great advice. Thanks again for coming on the show, Mike. You've been great.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
See you soon.
Thanks for listening to the CFO Track. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with a friend. I'll see you next time.